Which team, Warren Sharp, do you think has done the most to improve their lot from one year to the other?
Well, there's a few teams. I really like what the Washington Commanders have done, but I still think they've got a lot of growing pains to get through. I really like what a team like the Houston Texans, who are a little bit further along, did to support CJ Stroud. I think it's so valuable and important, Rich, for these teams when they have that quarterback on that rookie deal to really quickly go in there and make whatever changes are necessary and grow that roster thanks to that cheaper cap hit that quarterback is occupying. And so I think what this Texans did on both sides of the football defensively, but also, of course, offensively to help CJ Stroud is really meaningful. But there are some moves that some of the top tier teams made that I think are going to help them a lot. And one team that really needs some help in two aspects of the football are the Detroit Lions. And I think there are some big things in store potentially for the Lions. Now, I know could be not perceived as a hot take because they made it to the NFC Championship game last season. But this is a team I think that is set to have another similar season, and one or two things go their way. And this is a team that could be the NFC representative in the Super Bowl. And one of those things is kickers. And we know that the Detroit Lions, looking at my notes here, over the last 4 years, no team has made fewer field goals than the Detroit Lions. And not just that, we know that Dan Campbell doesn't like to attempt field goals. He goes for it on fourth down. They rank 25th in conversion rate of field goals, especially the longer field goals. We've seen them sometimes bang a couple of really long ones several years ago. But this team has really struggled kicking from distance. And now they go out and they get Jake Bates, who I think is obviously a weapon in the kicking game. He went 17 to 22 in the regular season, and he was 14 of 16 on attempts under 50 yards, but 7 of 12 from 50 plus. The Lions have made only 10 field goals in the last 4 years of 50 plus yards. He did it just one season. He made 7 of them, made 7 of 12. So I think that's going to help them a lot this upcoming season. They made some improvements on the defensive side of the ball. They knew what their weaknesses were. Their first 2 draft picks, they went out and got cornerbacks. They're really struggling in the secondary. That was really their big problem area last season. But I honestly, as I dug back through the team in the offseason, what I have found is that if only the Detroit Lions defensive coordinator sent fewer blitzes, this team would have a lot more success. When they were not blitzing, they had one of the higher blitz rates of any team. But when they weren't blitzing, they actually were right around average, just a little bit below average defensively in the secondary. But when they blitzed, they were like the worst team in the NFL, dead last in EPA allowed on pass plays. And we know they got a lot of pressure. Dan Campbell has talked about the pressure that his team was getting, but they just weren't converting sacks off of that pressure. That's going to go right for them this year. I think they're going to get a lot more sacks. Pressure does impact quarterback production. And so I think that that's a positive to get all that pressure. But I think sacks will eventually come, and they don't need to send these blitzes. When they were blitzing, they weren't really jumping up the ranks in terms of their sack rate. Actually, they improved their sack rate, but it wasn't moving up to like a top echelon. I think they need to tone down their blitz rate. They'll have more success in the secondary this upcoming season. They added some pieces there. They got Jake Bates in. And then here's another factor, Rich. We've known this for a little while now, but it's still telling to hear that the Detroit Lions this upcoming season play 14 out of 17 games in domes. 14 out of 17 games in domes. This team has big home road splits. They also have big dome outdoor splits, even when they're on the road. If they're playing in a dome, they are playing better than when they're playing outdoors on the road. And so I think the Detroit Lions really set themselves up well for a good season this year. I think their first 7 consecutive games are in domes. And their one lone outdoor game that they don't automatically play, they're obviously going to play in Green Bay. They're obviously going to play in Chicago. Forget about those 2 games. You're flashing up the schedule right now. Their only true road game that they don't have to otherwise play that's going to be outdoors is week 17 in San Francisco. So it's unlikely that we're going to have a weather situation or, wind situation. I mean, it could get windy there in San Francisco, but it's not really like playing in other areas like up in New England or in New York, things like that. So I think the Lions did some things this season that's going to really help them in 2024.
Now, I know I'm asking an author and an analyst who just banged out 550 pages on all 32 teams this question, but because I know you're about minutia. Are you really saying that you like the Lions to get past the San Francisco 49ers this year, in part because of the Michigan Panthers place kicker from the USFL or the UFL? I mean, like, is that really what you're throwing out my direction, Warren? That it might cause Dan Campbell to not go for it on 4th and too long from the middle of the plus side of the field? Is what you're saying?
Look, if there are plus EV situations that he should be going for it, hopefully he still goes for it in those situations. Okay. But I know there are times when he's going for it on 4th and probably a little bit too long because he doesn't trust his kicker. Remember what happened at the end of that first half in the NFC Championship game in San Francisco, where they were up big. I want to say it was like 24-7 heading into halftime, and he didn't feel confident in kicking it, so he decided to go for it. They end up not getting it, and they go into the locker room, and then San Francisco roars back, no pun intended, in the second half and wins the game and goes to the Super Bowl. I think that would be a situation where Dan Campbell feels very comfortable in sending Bates out there to kick it. So it absolutely is minutia. You're right, but I'm trying to leave no stone unturned.
I know, I appreciate
I think that is one factor that is going to be in the plus column for the Detroit Lions this upcoming season that maybe some people aren't thinking about enough.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.